Hello, and welcome back to Rewind with Ro, Season 2, Episode 12. I'm your host, Ro Carter. I have my amazing co-host,
Rob Smith,
in the house. In the house. How you doing, brother? You all right?
I'm good. I'm blessed and highly favored.
Okay. All right. I am back in Miami now. I had a little trip, so I was in last show we did. I was in Vegas. And then this week I'm back in Miami, but I made a little pit stop in New York City, my hometown. Let me tell you, ladies and gentlemen, it was such a good time. I went to the Knicks game. The energy in New York is just like, ooh, it's just like electric. We got, for football people, I'm a Jets fan, so we got Aaron Rodgers. I mean, everything is just like, give me some more. So speaking of New York, there was actually a little thing that was going on. It's called the Met Gala. One day we'll be there, right? One day.
Yes.
Yeah, there you go.
Yes, absolutely.
On the red carpet.
I'll hopefully be walking the carpet.
So the best thing I love about the Met Gala, it's always during playoffs, like basketball playoffs or hockey playoffs. And then I know you just see these crazy outfits and you're just like, oh my God, what are people doing? And so I don't want to go too much into it, but I want Rob, I know you've seen some pictures. Tell me who were you like, oh Lord, what are we doing? And who were you like, oh, that was nice. That was okay.
Well, I don't think I'm ever like, oh Lord, what were you doing?
Really? See, there was a couple. I was like, come on, brother.
I thought everybody looked great. I thought they looked great. So you're gonna have to tell me who you thought looked crazy. First of all, I think Rihanna and A$AP Rocky look great. You can't say anything bad about them. They always look good. I was happy to see. I'm just so happy to see Quinta Brunson's like come up, and she's everywhere. She's at the Met Gala walking the carpet. She wasn't like crazy over the top, but I was just happy to see her there. I was surprised I didn't hear more people talking about. I'm trying to think of who else I was like. I don't know. You tell me.
So the big talk of the night was Lil Nas X, and oh Lord, he just had a little thong on, and then all these jewels, bedazzled face, and he was all painted up and looked like they were calling him the Silver Surfer. For some, there are some crazy comments. I thought it was a little extra, but you know what? I take my hat up to him. Anybody that feels comfortable enough to get in his own skin and put that on, God bless you.
And it's supposed to be over the top and costume and on theme. And
you didn't have any clothes. What costume, man? What are you talking about? I could see if there was like an actual clothes. He had no clothes.
Oh my God. I was like, Tim's likes blocking people's view. She always got something big over the back of her head so nobody can see past her, but she looked great. I'm trying to think who else did I love. The Kardashians, I always say, I don't compare them to anybody else because everybody else is already hating on them. So I don't want to go there. I'm just going to pick my favorite out of them. And I always think Kendall, and it's an unfair advantage because she's a model by trade, but she always looks so great at the Met Gala. So I thought she killed it as usual. Trevor Noah with the cornrows, like, can't go wrong.
Yeah, I was like, ooh, Trev, you're going in. That's what I'm blackity black. You guys know, hey, how black I am. Don't challenge me. So he got a new card. His card got renewed.
His card never got taken away. So
but people hang out a little bit, hanging out Roger Federer too much for a little bit. You forget your roots, and he got 10-year renewal. He's good.
And Cardi B can do no wrong.
Cardi B looked good. Lizzo looked amazing, and then there's an amazing picture with the French fry, and she's like, "I'm here."
She was super classy.
Super classy. Tiana Taylor, she looked classy. There was a scene though, Usher's like showing her eating at the table, and I guess in the past the meals haven't been the best. She was like, listen, man, I fit in this outfit. I want to eat something after all said and done and take the photos. And she brought her own Chick-fil-A. And she was just eating it at the table, and I was, and Usher's over like, baby girl, come on.
She was
But I love
hungry.
the comments. Black Twitter did not go at her. They were like, you know what, girl, shoot, take care of yourself, do good. That's good.
You hungry? Get pull that package out of your purse if you're hungry.
I really like Puffy's outfit.
Oh, him and Carisha look.
Yeah, that all
really
black.
good.
That was like, that was like some throwback. I guess it was just to his line as well. So he just did a whole kind of tribute costume. It's really cool. If you go to his Instagram, he showed like how they set it off the design and how it came together. So it's pretty cool. So he looked good. Again, the only thing that really just threw me off was Lil Nas X.
He's always coming just to stir up Twitter. He just wants people to start screaming.
And then they showed you the back, and I gotcha.
He just wants people to be upset.
It's different going through life when you got all these people hating on you all the time, right? It's just a different energy. Like, how can I piss you off today?
Right.
And have a good time. But otherwise, it was very classy. Everybody looked great. There was also a New York roach stepped on the red carpet. That was
I saw that.
Yeah, they didn't know what to do, and everybody was like, "Yo, stop that thing, yo!" And it was like,
they just took pictures of him, like walking the
carpet. So that was funny as well. Besides that, nothing really else. Like I said, playoffs going on. Anything going on new in your life?
No.
Sorry, I didn't mean to laugh like that. That was a really straight up on it. Nah, man, I got nothing.
No.
Man. All right.
No. I was auditioning pretty heavily, and then now there's a writer's strike. So
be creative.
Well, I'm writing my own stuff. I'm not in a union for that, so I'm writing my own projects right now.
He's hired. You can please check. So tonight's show it's a 5-part series. There's only 3 parts out right now. Currently on Hulu. It's called Dear Mama, and basically it's directed by Alan Hughes, which is crazy because Alan Hughes had a falling out with Tupac. If you go back in the tape or even just watch the doc, you'll see like, oh damn, he got stomped. So we'll go into that later. Because the Hughes brothers used to work with him all the time, and then we'll deep dive into that a little bit. But basically, the story, the 5-part series, talks about his relationship with his mother, Afeni Shakur, and Tupac's relationship, and also his dad is going to come into the later episodes. So it's very interesting to see a couple things. They've done so many Tupac movies, so many Biggie movies, so many things. One, you never know who killed him, right? You never know these certain things. But what I love is that you really got to learn like where he came from, right? And who made the man he was. And so that was very interesting and intriguing to me. What did you think about it?
I am so impressed by this documentary, and I keep telling everybody, I'm like, you have to watch Dear Mama. Yeah. It's only 3 episodes in, but and for me, and I feel like I was so unaware of who Afeni Shakur was, and I'm like so mad at myself for the fact that I was just not aware of what she did for the movement for Black people and her involvement in the Black Panther Party and how integral she was to the progression of that organization. And this documentary just sheds so much light on things and kind of really explains why he became such a prolific thinker from a political perspective, even though like we see the progression of him growing into a person who became a little bit more like violent and outwardly aggressive in his persona. We kind of see him, take the journey and why he made those decisions to do those things when he was moving in a really politically intelligent way until he started to do some of those things. But just to know the history of where he came from and who his mother was and why he was growing into that space is just powerful. And it's really one of those documentaries where you're sitting there, I'm like, oh, I wish the other 2 parts were already out, because you don't want to stop watching because it's so infectious, the information that you're gaining from it. And I love that they did it's like 2 documentaries in one. So we're watching his mom's story and we're watching his story, and we're kind of watching the similarities of the experiences they have in life, even though there's 2 completely different times. It's great. It's really well done.
I would say it's 3, because you're also learning about the Black Panther movement.
Yes.
You're getting a deeper dive into what's really going on, right? There's been movies out there before, The Black Messiah, but this one is really, really deep diving because she was involved, right? So you're seeing all the things that went on. how they set him up, what was really going on, even the politics at that time, right? Think about that. J. Edgar Hoover, the cops that can just come into your house and just do whatever you want. They do these knocks like, hey, there's a fire outside your door. And then boom, 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 15 cops coming in and grabbing you up. So understanding what your rights are back then, especially for a person of color, was huge. And a woman, how strong and smart that she was. I mean, we'll get into a little bit later. How I want to do this, and you let me know if you're okay with that, is I want to do, we'll go by the chapters, right? The episode. So there's 3 episodes out right now, so it's pretty easy. The first one is Panther Power. That's episode 1, and basically goes into Afeni Shakur's background and how she got involved with the Black Panthers. We learn a little bit about who could be Tupac's dad, and then we also see a young Tupac in school, which will blow your mind to see him. He looks so innocent, man. It's when you just see him talking about poetry and writing and just trying to survive, and like, what's the point of learning German, man? I'm just trying to pay the bills, where I live. And I was like, whoa, so you see the intelligence in him at a young age, and it really exudes off the screen. And then you see, hey, how do I get involved in this? I know I'm great, but where do I want to put this energy to? And where's my mom, being in and out because she has an addiction, which that is crazy too. They don't deep dive into the addiction as much. That's my only knock, is that I wish I knew more about how she got hooked on it, and hearing it in her own words, right? Like how I couldn't kick it, because his whole childhood is her going off and out, on and off, on and off, on and off. So she's in, and then she's back with him. But you can see even that little time he had with her was such an imprint on who he was as a young man.
Absolutely. I love the way they open the documentary, and it like gives you a juxtaposition of who he was like as an adult, and then they move into his story of him as in high school. But I love how they opened it with telling the story that they later give you the full experience of in episode 3. But they open it with the intro of the story of him shooting at the 2 white off-duty officers who were assaulting an unarmed Black person. And I thought they did a good job of doing that, because they really wanted you to understand that Tupac was a person who had this desire to protect Black people at any cost. And he really did, care about the forward progression of Black culture and the protection of Black people. And I think that all came from, of course, him being raised by a woman who was a figurehead in the Black Panther Party. She was a very prominent person. And I can't say enough good things about it. And I keep telling everyone to start watching it. I'm like, you have to start watching this documentary, because you're going to be blown away. Yeah.
So that, again, there's a lot of beautiful moments. We really get to see how Tupac matures. And you also see, as he's kind of moving on, there's a thing that happens to him with police officers, and he gets knocked upside his head, which I was like, oh yeah, Tupac used to have hair. And then when did it automatically just started going bald? And then, wow, to find out that the police knocked him upside his head so much that he got alopecia from that incident, and he couldn't grow his hair. He had like patches and stuff. So that's why he went bald. And I was like, holy cow. But as I got to watch this documentary more, I was like, damn, he had PTSD, right? And back then, especially in the 90s and 80s, there wasn't any outlet, let alone acknowledgement that, hey, I'm going through some stuff right now. Even people came from Vietnam, right? It's like, oh, that is crazy. They came from Vietnam. Didn't acknowledge that something was going on, right? That they need help. They need therapy. Therapy doesn't come around and be huge till, I think, right around now, right? Last 5 years.
Now.
That's crazy. So think about that. And who's your people around you, right? Who's your team? Your mom is in and out of your life. You don't really have that many father figures. And so it's trying to find out, like, where do I fit in? And people don't forget, he died at like 25, 26. And so that's young. It always blows my mind to see, even Fred Hampton, we talked about it a little bit. These guys were young Black men. I was nowhere near these men at 21, 25, 26. I was too busy hanging out, having a good time. My politics weren't really aligned that way. I was conscious, though, because, again, my mom, be woke up. That's how you woke, I have your head in a swivel. But that really blew my mind of how, like, that era is just a different group of black men, right? I just think the education level is just a whole nother wavelength of knowing who you are, knowing that, hey, I am somebody, owning that, right? Like owning I am a person just like you are. I know society is not treating us like people, but I know I am a person. So I admire that, because that's something that I was always nervous about growing up as a kid, going to predominantly white schools and not knowing. I knew I was somebody, but I didn't fit in with them, and they casted me out. So I was like, how do I get in here when I'm a young kid, right? How do I get my voice heard? And so I really, really felt his pain and struggle kind of going through that. What did you think about that?
Yeah, well, again, they do such a good job of really bouncing back and forth between the two stories, so that you kind of have an understanding of, you know, the struggle that his mom had to go through. And I will say this, and this is what I keep thinking about. You know, so many people know his mom as being a crackhead because of the music. Like, that's largely the extent to what we know about her. Like, I would say generally people, but then when you watch this documentary, you are thrust into the world of her being, you know, this insane powerhouse who represented herself in court against the FBI.
Yeah, later in the third, but that was crazy.
Yeah, but you know, it's just insane that we get to see, you know, we get to see her story next to his story, and we get to learn so much about this woman that, you know, for all intents and purposes, we all just knew was a crackhead, but he really loved her. And then now we're diving into her life and getting an intimate experience. So I don't want to say too much about it, because I know you're going to want to talk about a lot of the things that we learn about her and, you know, the birth of Tupac in episode 3. But yeah, also seeing him go from, like you said, and me and Koku, shout out to Koku. Me and Koku have been watching that video of him in high school for years. Like, we send it to each other a couple times a year and like crack up, because I don't think people see that side of Tupac. They think he's like thug life, right? So they don't get to, most people don't watch that interview. So they don't get to see this like kind of meek, quiet, almost like lispy Tupac, who was highly intelligent and highly aware of his position in society as a black man that young. And to your point that you were making, you know, and I don't even know how to digest it, but, you know, I always think about my grandfather and what he had to deal with. You know, he's talked about this. He was like, I couldn't go out into the street and protest in the way that like my sisters did, because if I saw somebody turn a hose on my sister, I was going to shoot him. And he was like, so I'd have been dead. Like, he'd have been lynched. He's like, so I had to know what I could do and where I could insert myself to be helpful to the cause. And then to hear my parents talk about, you know, being integrated into school, because that was happening at the time when they were in school. So people don't really realize how close we are generationally to racism in that way. And that's why when certain segments of society are like, oh, get over it, that was history, we don't want our kids to feel bad about it, and to your other point, therapy is now becoming a thing. So our parents, our grandparents, our great grandparents weren't dealing with that kind of trauma in the right way. So they had to like put on a tougher exterior. They had to go through a lot more than we have to go through. And I think presently we are fighting for a lot of freedoms and a lot of rights for our people, but not in the way our parents and our grandparents had to. So watching, you know, the story of Afeni Shakur and Tupac is just, it's mind-boggling.
Yeah. So my girlfriend watched as well, and she was like, I just saw him as a thug. And she's like, now I got to see this. She's like, it blew her mind. And I fell asleep during the first. I had to watch it like 3 times. I fell asleep first time. Watching late. I was watching it late. Watching late. So I caught up, and she was like, oh my God, I never saw this other side of Tupac. And think about social media back then as well, right? The outlets that you had, they didn't really have outlets. It's just whatever the news gave you. Maybe you can get on MTV back then and kind of speak the truth, you know, or some kind of media, black media, Arsenio Hall. But otherwise, people weren't trying to hear you. Also, his battle of going against the vice president and using you, right, as just like a way to get his point across. And like, hey, This man is evil. He's the reason why kids are dying is because of Tupac. Think about that. The reason why all black people are killing each other and being killed by cops is because of Tupac's music. That is crazy. So I can't even imagine the pressure of dealing with that at 22, 23 years old and thinking that I'm the one he didn't own that. Like, that's not me. That's them doing that. But just knowing that everybody thought that who were adults, you know, and it could actually change the way your life was going to go, the trajectory of where it was going to go. And that meaning you getting caught up with, as we find out later, just being in the wrong place at the wrong time. So it doesn't matter if the truth is that you didn't do anything, you're already labeled as this bad person. And anything that comes behind this is bad, you know? So it's really interesting to see, you know, they dabble into his movie career a little bit, the music video sides. I used to love Digital Underground, one of my favorite bands. They were amazing. And I remember, like, if you watch the old video, I get around, but he was always in the back hanging out with Digital Underground. And then I get around, he finally comes out. But to see them talking about it, yo, he was on tour with us. He would do anything. It's like, I mean, you want me to dance? You want to do this? And to think about, Tupac was like a roadie in a way, you know, back in the days. And then he became this star out of nowhere. So it's really interesting to see that. So the second chapter is called Changes. And basically you see him kind of take over in the music lane, coming from behind the scenes to being the forefront of his own kind of label and brand. And then also later on, an incident happened where a kid gets shot at a concert that he's doing when he's coming back home. And it really just turns his whole head around about, hey, what am I doing? You know, where is my music going? Is it saying the right messages? And people are challenging him too. What did you think about chapter 2?
Chapter 2 was interesting. It started to really develop the story of, you know, him as an artist and him as a person who was advocating for women and him who was advocating for people of color in general, but most specifically advocating for women. And I think it was, you know, I think they did a great job of setting up the story so that they can give you the culmination of the things that happened to him at the end of each episode, because we really opened this episode talking about like him hearing about this woman who was, you know, molested, I guess, and then ended up having a baby, and the baby was found in a trash can.
Yeah, Brenda's got a baby based on a true story.
Yeah,
young kid was found. That happened a lot. I remember in the 90s when I was going, especially on the East Coast. I don't know how prevalent it was in the West Coast, but you heard about that. Kids just didn't know what to do, right? So they put their baby in the trash can.
And so he, you know, wrote this beautiful song that, you know, was trying to explain to people like the story of the woman, and not just to make her a villain for the circumstance she ended up in. And it also, like you said earlier, delves into also then it bounces from there where you see Tupac as this person who's, you know, advocating for women, who's advocating for people of color, because the Rodney King circumstance happens. And then we move into a space where Tupac is elevating his career, and then he's walking to the bank in Oakland and gets stopped by police officers who have no reason to stop him other than the fact that he's a black man walking towards the bank, and they
obviously have money in there.
Yeah, and they brutally beat him. And you start to see these things, these moments weigh on him, and these moments start to shift who he is and the way that he presents himself outwardly to the world. And it's like you said, back to what you said about having an opportunity to like let some of those things go through therapy, or like move through some of these experiences through therapy, and him being a creative person who was like living his outlet through his poetry, or living his outlets through, you know, acting roles. And he embodied a lot of those characters, and he started to take on a lot of those things. And I don't think he had a space to release them properly. And his outward expression of things started to become a little bit more violent. But it was just interesting to watch the progression of him, like you said, from this high school boy who was like meek and smart and politically aware and socially aware, and, you know, attentive to the experiences of his mother and other women in his world. He didn't want to be the guy who, you know, went out and just, met girls and had sex with them and left them. He wanted to be in committed relationships. So like that was his goal. He wanted to find a woman, be in a committed relationship with her and treat her right and respect her. Like he was that guy. And we start to see through his lived experiences and him not being able to break through the persona of the good guy, him not being able to live as a good guy. It's not working. So he starts to kind of break that experience and outwardly live as the bad guy.
And it's crazy. There's an interview. You just realize, like, I'm not saying what I'm preaching, right? I'm not acting what I'm saying all these positive things about women, but I'm hanging out, man. I'm living my best life. So that kind of takes you for a spin. Like, how can we trust anything you're saying if you're singing about one thing and then you're doing the other thing, right? Whether it be gangbanging or treating women with respect, it's a whole bunch of things. It's a culmination of things. One was very interesting. The Hughes brothers, they were very integral in young Tupac and a lot of the videos he did, one of his first movie roles. And so they have a big falling out to the point where one of the Hughes brothers gets jumped by Tupac. And that's a funny part of the movie where Snoop Dogg, they're interviewing him. Snoop almost chokes to death because he's like, wait, what happened? It's like, Tupac didn't beat me. He's like, 10 people beat me. Not
10 of his people beat me. Yeah. Tupac didn't beat me.
And I forget he's like, yeah, I guess his security back there was all Bloods and Crips, was a mixture of both. And so those guys, like, yo, those guys didn't play back then. He's like, you're lucky you're alive. And I was like, damn, and you get to see also, like, I imagine taking on someone you were so close with, right? But in 5 minutes, ruin years of friendship. And I love that quote. There was a quote in the movie. It was like, in 5 minutes, you ruin a lifetime of friendship that you have with this one person. And so they had words and they weren't comfortable. I guess in Menace to Society, there's a role that they wanted Tupac to play, and Tupac didn't want to play it the way they had it. And so I love that the Hughes brothers look at it later like, you know what? I should have listened to him. I couldn't see it then. And so that reflection, that self-reflection is really huge, especially for Black men as we get older. That reflection of those younger relationships that we had and where I messed up. Not saying we have to heal all those, but how does that help me grow as a Black man for my next sort of adventure or next encounter with somebody? Am I willing to listen so I can see something from a different angle? And maybe that even makes it better. Or I'm just like, nah, man, this is my idea. I'm not listening to anybody and kind of go from there. So I really love that they put that point in there. I don't know if it was purposely done or just happened, because it looked like it just happened out of nowhere.
It seems like it just happened because they were like, I know you're directing this, but why don't you sit down and tell us this story? And he's like, I was not planning on doing this.
Yeah.
But it was, I think it did add a lot to the story. And I did also like that he acknowledged maybe he should have listened to Tupac in that moment, because he does think it was the right thing to do for the story, to tell the story, because Tupac's perspective was, I don't want to just blanketly tell this story of this character who becomes Muslim and not explain how he got to that place. And it doesn't make sense to tell the story without telling how he got to that place. So, they were like, I guess he was probably right, but we couldn't really do anything about it at the time. It didn't justify Tupac's response. And it didn't justify Tupac having 10 people jump.
You have to watch Tupac's response too. That's a great response.
Yeah. So, but yeah, I did like that he stepped from behind the camera and actually shared that portion of his story, because I think it was important to the progression of the story as a whole. And I think episode 2 is also where we start to learn that the leaders of the gangs who are in jail are really asking Tupac to be the face of peace between all of these gangs on the outside. Yeah. But it's difficult because he is also this artist who has, like you said, this persona where he's like living thug life. But at the same time, he needs to be the person who's like, listen, if you guys are out in the street banging and you're killing each other and you kill civilians, and when you go to jail, you're going to be done, because the heads of all of this are in jail and they're telling you not to do what's actively happening. So they wanted Tupac to kind of be that voice. So it's really interesting seeing all of the things that were going on in his world, and like all of the directions he's being pulled, and all the expectations that are coming at this young artist from every angle. there's expectations from family, there's expectations from like from a political perspective, there's expectations from, you know, him as an actor, there's expectations, you know, there's just all of this weight being put on him. So it's I couldn't imagine living that immense amount of pressure.
Yeah, like it reminded me of how young Martin Luther King was, you know, when he got assassinated. These are young black men that had all this pressure to try to fix it. You the one that we're pointing out that you're gonna fix everything for all black people. I was like, that's not, it's not as easy as you make it sound. It's almost nearly impossible, right? But we can actually talk about the things that are going on in our neighborhoods and how we can fix them and make them better. So I don't know if he was in the right headspace or had the right support group. It kind of reminded me of Kanye a little bit, right? Like, that pressure to put on himself, right? I think he goes, there's directions he's going straight, and then he just goes, woo. And it's all because his mama wasn't there for him, right? Yeah. And that's the bigger picture of it, right? How important, we always say, to have both mom and dad in the household. But, at that young age, having the mom that was there for you to support you and tell you the things you need and check you too. Because that's the one thing black moms are especially great with, is they'll check you in a second, like, hey, you wilding out right now. And I think, with some artists, it's just like that creativeness goes to another level and needs someone to help you kind of reel it back in, but someone that can respect you and also someone you respect, right? And if your mom has been there for your whole life, that's the one you're going to respect, ride or die, regardless if the arguments go to places where you're not comfortable. But at least you know that they love you at the end of the day. If your dad's there for you, of course, that's another outlet that you can do. But his dad was kind of like, hey, I don't even know my dad until later. And we find that out, which that's going to be the 4th episode, I believe, where they deep dive in that. So also in this episode, we're finding also about the Black Panther and everything's going down. We're finding out that there are some secret undercover agents working for the FBI that have gotten to the Black Panther, and they've kind of moved the directions that they wanted to move. It's really interesting when they go to trial and they talk about the people who were like kind of like forcing guns on them, right? How to shoot. Oh, you should kill somebody, cut their throats, teaching you all this stuff. And it was like, wait a minute. And because I remember when I heard about the Black Panther movement, it was like they really cared about giving back to the neighborhoods, right?
Yeah, it was like the free lunches for kids.
Yeah, the biggest things, but also the BS was, hey, we're not going to take any BS from white people that are going to disrespect us. We're not looking for a fight, but if you come at us, we'll come right back at you. And I was like, oh, that's a different mentality, right? That I understand that. Versus you heard other things like, oh, no, they'll kill anybody on sight. They're doing all these dangerous things. They're making bombs. And I love when they kind of go through some of the statements because of the terminology back then, like jive or that's the bomb. Like they weren't referring to actually like killing somebody or doing this. It was like, that's what they called like marijuana. That's what they called like, oh, hey, these ladies are hot. That girl's the bomb. And so they're writing all this stuff down, the FBI, and they have no one to explain what these words mean. So that was kind of funny to me. Like, wow, this is like the FBI, and they have no one to black explain it to them and be like, hey, well, this is what they mean. This is what's going on here.
But that's the unfortunate part about it too, because it was black men who were positioned into the Black Panther Party, who were FBI agents who were trying to manipulate them into doing things that would, be the downfall of the organization. That was really there, like marching for the people's rights and protesting for people's rights. And they show like it wasn't just an organization that was like, we're only fighting for us. Like there were others in those spaces and in those marches, and that's why it was, when she is defending herself in court and she's, going back and forth with the one FBI agent who had infiltrated and was there. She's like, correct me if I'm wrong, you were the one who were teaching the kids how to cut throats with machetes, right? While we were out, trying to, make sure that people could have educated and have meals. Like they were doing the work in like Don said, in a community-minded way. And, the FBI agents who had infiltrated were the ones who were actively attempting to, impart violence into the organization so that they had a reason to bring them down. So it was really, really great. Like you said, it was almost like we're watching 3 documentaries in one. which is,
and it gives you a better understanding to the Black Panthers. And I wish, I mean, The Black Messiah is a brilliant movie, but you learn more about Fred Hampton. But I really wish they would deep dive into like what was really going on in the programs, right, and how beneficial they were to the community. I mean, hopefully, we're going to see another 2 episodes. I don't know how much more they'll deep dive into that, but I wish someone would do a 5-part documentary about that. Like, what is really the Black Panther movement? Like, what is it like the 1969 project? I wish they would do something like that so you can really see like what was going on. So now we don't have to have this argument, right? I always, every now and then, I argue with some white person about, the Black Panthers were evil. That's what they were doing, this and that. I'm like, I need something to show them that, hey, here you go. Here's a document to do, because they're not going to read it on their own, right? A lot of people won't. And the way we're just wiping out education, in certain parts of America, there's no way to learn about that, right? So you're having this argument that kind of drives you insane. You're going around in circles. So it's really nice. I love this documentary. Not only we learn in the music part, but we're also and about family, but we're also learning about the movement, right? So that was beautifully done. Chapter 3. One thing I want to add too, Mike Tyson is actually speaking in this, which is great. So they did some great interviews. Snoop Dogg's in it. Mike Tyson's in it. Mike, and I'll go before I go into chapter 3. Mike talks about, when he was in prison and Tupac came to visit, and he's like, it didn't matter, white, black, Hispanic, everybody just got up. Tupac came to visit me, and it was just so crazy. But then also I saw Tupac going down, in a spiral, and it's like the same way I was going. And so I try to tell him, like, imagine Mike Tyson trying to tell you, you gotta get your shit together, and you're not listening. Everybody's saying, I'm talking to the kid, but he's not hearing me. And he just went to a dark, dark place that I don't know how many people can come out of, especially at that young age, because you're angry, right? A young 21-year-olds, when they're angry, and then also I'm a star at the same time, and I have money to do whatever I kind of want to do. I think his downfall later on, there's a case where he doesn't get charged, right? Because they mess up the case.
That was the police shooting.
The police shooting, right?
They removed the guns from evidence.
Once you get away with shooting at 2 white cops, and you didn't get charged for that, I can only imagine where your brain goes from there, right? And your boy's like, yeah, baby, you untouchable. No, you can do whatever you want. Come on, let's go. And you're like, yeah. And you're just gobbling all that up. And that what kind of takes you to another level of like, there's nobody else like me, right? There's no one else that can understand the way my brain works, how successful and skillful I am at what I do. They also said his bravado was like a very sexy, ladies loved him. So you're getting it from so many different angles where it's like, how do I go on the straight and narrow, right? Even getting shot at, like, is that going to straighten me out? Or am I still holding that anger in?
Yeah, and I think as we move into chapter 3, they did a great job of showing us that he was dealing with these 2 trials, right? So he's dealing with the trial where he actively shot 2 white off-duty officers. He shot them because they were assaulting an unarmed black man. So they were assaulting this man, and he's like, nope, not letting these white people in Atlanta. Nope, not letting these 2 white people get away with beating up this black guy. So he shoots them as they're running away. And then at the same time,
hits a cop in the butt cheek. He hits one of the cops.
And they really don't deep dive into what those cops did and why they were beating this guy up when they were off duty. Like, why are 2 off-duty cops just beating up a guy? Like,
they said they were coming out of a bar. I'm like, nah.
Yeah. And then at the same time, he meets Haitian Jack, the guy who's like really hood, really gangster.
If you've seen Above the Rim, that's where he modeled that character from.
Modeled his character after him. But yeah, and then he kind of, I guess, develops a more intimate relationship with him where they're like at a hotel together, and then he the fan comes over to the hotel. She's in the room with Tupac and Haitian Jack. Tupac leaves the room. Haitian Jack stays in the room with her, and his friend comes in. And then like an hour later, Tupac was apparently passed out in the other room. They were adjoined, and she comes out and she's crying, and she had been assaulted. They walk away. Tupac and his homie get arrested.
Yeah.
And I think the world at that point attacks Tupac, who is this person who like we learned earlier, had been advocating for the safety and rights of women. He was putting out songs like Brenda Had a Baby. Like we learned in episode 1 how much he passionately wanted to be a person who found a woman, developed a relationship with her. And now the world has turned on him, and the world is like, you're a rapist, you're a liar, you put out all this music and you advocate for women, but behind closed doors, you don't. And you see everyone in his life is talking about the fact that they all knew. They were like, there's no way Tupac was involved in that, because he was too much of a person who really loved and revered and respected women. Like, he would have never done that. And then he talks about it publicly. He's like, I should have done more. I should have protected her. And he carries the guilt of not protecting her, of falling asleep and letting her be in a precarious situation with 2 people who took advantage of her in a way that he would have never allowed had he been aware and awake. And I think that really led to a dark space for him, because you have these 2 circumstances where he shoots a white cop in the protection and service of a Black person who he didn't know, because he was just that person. He was a person who came from Afeni Shakur. He really cared about the protection and safety of Black people. And then now the world is like dogging him and turning their backs on him because he's being accused of assaulting a woman, when he's saying, hey, I didn't do this. And I do feel guilty that I left her in that situation, but I didn't do it. So I think seeing him like spiral down into that dark place, because he's like, I've spent my whole life advocating for people of color, and now people of color have turned their back on me. So it was really interesting to see, because I don't know if you're okay with me moving on to the next point is when he gets
so I'll say this chapter 3, it's called So Many Tears.
Yeah, so he gets acquitted from the case where he shoots the cop. He's still on trial for the sexual assault, and then he leaves court and goes to the studio and is met with someone in the lobby of the studio and gets shot in the head, and he gets shot 3 times. So he's like, literally, I have spent my life protecting everyone, and now Black people are trying to kill me. Yeah. And for something that happened that I did not even do. And then that's when he really spirals into a dark place.
Yeah, and then Jasmine Guy, which you find out later, was a friend of his. I was like, get out of here. I was Jasmine. And he winds up being held up at her place for a while. And she comes on the screen and she talks about that experience of knowing Tupac. And so that reminded me of Jada, right? And I was like, ooh, we're going to get... And I know they couldn't do it for so many reasons, but I would love to have seen like Jada kind of actually speak upon Tupac and kind of that moment, because that was an integral part. If you go back to the trouble back on their side, how their relationship was when they dated, right? And as young actors coming up and all that. Also, I would love if they would have got Janet Jackson, right, to hear her side of poetic justice. So, because I remember they made him take an AIDS test. Remember this? There was a big thing back then because he was hanging out with all these ladies all the time, and Eazy-E just contracted AIDS at the time. So they were like, "Yo, Tupac, I need you to take an AIDS test before you do a movie." Again, you didn't really know how you could contract AIDS. So even kissing scenes were like a big, like, oh my God, I want to make sure this guy's tested for everything. I'll never forget that. And when I saw this movie, I was like, oh my God, it was a beautiful movie, because you got to see matter of fact, you got to see the younger Tupac, right? I was about to say you got to see another side, but we did see it in the documentary. So you see that kid again come out on the screen, right? And he just cares about women, cares about people, cares about kids, about everybody. And it just exudes off the screen again. So this documentary is so well done. You're learning more also about Afeni's case. Again, as Rob mentioned earlier, she defends herself. She's acquitted, non-guilty verdict, which is crazy. Everybody went all over the place. But also we learn a little bit about the Black Panther movement and how it starts to go underground, right? And they're not, that's a bigger picture I think they don't really talk about, is the women and men kind of like the different energies, right? In terms of the communication, number one, and number two, about how they go about getting money out and kind of doing all that stuff.
Yeah, well, this whole education around the experience of the Black Panthers, and this is a good documentary to have people watch who already have that negative perspective of the Black Panther Party, because they get to really see the intimate experiences of what happened. You get to see it through the lens of the men who were in the organization, and then you get to hear it from the perspective of those who interacted with Afeni. And there were several things to me that stood out, and one was when, and I don't know if they called them the like Harlem 12 or the New York 12 or whatever, when they all got arrested,
Yeah,
and they made the decision to bail out Afeni first because she could publicly speak in a way that was representative of what they wanted to do in their focus as an organization, and she was the one who was going to kind of change that narrative so people didn't see them as this violent, horrible organization, but they saw this woman who was like outspoken and powerful in appearance and in tonality when she spoke. So they let her out first. But then to see them now go to the point where they're showing up for trial and they decide to go underground, but nobody tells her. So she shows up in court and nobody's there because they've all run. And she's like, what? Like, I can't imagine the weight of that shock that she had to feel. And then we also learned that she, like, when she goes to jail, she's pregnant with Tupac, and
Mama's in jail. That's a whole nother experience, and how he survived that, right? So you see the DNA of this young. We always say we're descendants of queens and kings, but you really get to see where this young Tupac is from, right? His mom and his dad are fighters, freedom fighters out there trying to do the right thing in the world, and they're part of this huge movement. And you just see it. It's in his DNA right off the bat, right? It's just, you just feel it, like he's meant to be greater than who he is. And I can't even imagine the pressure of that. We talked about it earlier, but just knowing that no matter what, you're going to be kind of crucified for anything you do, right? So if you move this way, this certain group is not going to like you. If you move this way, this other group is not going to like you. So trying to be politically correct at all times is really hard. Also, when you're trying to push a certain narrative, like, hey, I care, but also I want to be a kid, right? I want to be 21. I want to be 22. I want to still live my life and enjoy, the fruits of my nature of what I've earned, right? I've gone out there and I've done all these things and achieved all these accolades. So I had to look back at his films. I forgot, like Above the Rim, Poetic Justice, and Juice, which they are very different. You could see almost someone can argue, well, it's the same character. It's like, no. Above the Rim, he's crazy. Juice, Above the Rim, he's crazy. Juice, you see the earlier part of that Above the Rim character, but it's a young kid trying to make a way for himself and get out of the hood. And then Poetic Justice is that sensitive side. And then one of my favorite songs to this day is Dear Mama. It's always been a classic, and I Get Around. It's always fun song, summer song. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. But I love that they were able to get all the rights to the music and actually play that, because you really felt a part of that time, and I was like, oh man. And that's what I love about music, is that you can always remember where you were when you first heard that song, or it brings you a memory, positive, hopefully. Sometimes it'll be negative, but it just, you reflect on a moment in time. You're like, oh man, I remember that and how it made me feel and where I was at and who I may be thinking about. Or my mom. I think about my mom all the time when I hear that song, whether she's alive or she's gone. So I really love this documentary. They really did a great job of just expressing the pain of a young Black man, let alone it being Tupac, but just the struggles of what we had to go through at that time.
Yeah, and correction, it was the Panther 21. I got the numbers. Right. So the Panther 21 was the 21 members of the Black Panthers that had been arrested. But I agree with you. The music was such an important part of the storytelling in this documentary, and also his aunt, I guess, her sister, who's giving a lot of detail about Afeni and her experiences, and she kind of recants a lot of the experiences since she's no longer with us. She kind of guides us through the story. We hear her voice from time to time, but from interviews she's done in the past. But her sister, when she talks about when Tupac first showed her the lyrics to that song or played the song for her, and how emotional that was for her, because she hadn't really known if she had reached him in that way and if he'd forgiven her for the mistakes that she made, because of course he made songs prior that talked about her destroying their life because she was addicted to crack. And so how it was great to see how touched she was when he created that song and made that song for her. So it's beautifully done. It's so good. I cannot wait for the next 2 episodes.
All right, there you go. There you go. Anything you want to add, Rob?
Just watch it. Go watch it because
it's on Hulu. A new episode comes out this Friday. So, like I said, we can't speak more about this film. I would actually love, hey, you know what? There's a writer's strike right now. We should hit up the Hughes brothers.
Do it.
That's what we're gonna do. We're gonna hit up.
Do it, bro.
Hey, man, that's suggestions. Rob's like, you do it. All right.
No, but I think everyone should watch it. And as you mentioned earlier, there are people who still don't really have an understanding or a correct understanding as to the nature of what the Black Panther Party was, what their movement was, and what they really wanted. And I think this is a great documentary to kind of wet their tongue so they can have an understanding of that. And like you, having your girlfriend watch it and for her to see the experience and see, oh my gosh, like he wasn't just this thug, which was crazy because they talk about it. They're like, I don't remember the percentage that they gave, but the highest number of sales of that music at the time was from white kids. They were the ones predominantly buying the music. So it's great that people are getting to see the humanity behind him and not just him for some of the lyrics, their favorite lyrics from songs that were perceived as violent. So it's a great story. It's a great documentary. It's a great peek into the life of Afeni. It's a great peek into the life of Tupac and the Black Panther Party. So
check it out.
Highly recommend it.
And I'll leave with one more quote from my mom. My mom always said to me is that always know the company you keep. So meaning knowing how crazy they can get and how level-headed they can get, because that might put you in a situation that you cannot get out of. And so I remember that, and watching this, I was like, wow, he needed that guidance, right? Just to get out of some of these situations. Like when you have too many yes people around you in your camp, and we see it to this, you know what's crazy? It always blows my mind. It's 2023. Every single thing that everybody has been done, right? The rock stars that have died are on drugs, hanging out with the ladies, driving all the cars, and embezzlement, selling drugs. Like, it's already been done, but yet we still feel like these up and coming people like, nah, they didn't do it. I'm smarter than them. I know how to do it the right way. Like, just read a book. Google it. Just Google how this is not a successful way to go. Seek therapy, talk it out, know what's going on. And all right, that's my 2 cents. Thank you, Donnell, for coming on tonight. And the comment was, documentary is the new education now, which is true. Unfortunately, it is true. Forget school, right? I don't need school. Right?
No, but I think it's extremely important for history to be documented. I don't care if it's in documentary form. If someone wants to write a film like Chevalier to tell the story of these people who were integral to the progression of culture and society, and their stories were destroyed because people are afraid to show the greatness of Black and brown people. So, while they're trying to wipe us away and wipe away the truth of what we've done to really build the world, I think it's important to document them through, the format of film, because if they're going to start banning books at all the schools so that people can't really get a real education, at least they can digest it in documentary form.
Question. This idea came up to me for a new show or new idea. So someone can take it and run with it. Be my guest. Just give me 1%.
Maybe don't say it, bro. Let's talk about this.
No. But hear me out. You ever see The Man in the High Castle?
Mm-hmm.
So basically, it's about what if we didn't win the war, World War II, mm-hmm. and then they come over here, and so China.
I'm looking for a part of that.
Sorry, Japan owns half the United States, and then Germany owns the other half, and then there's like these middle states where you can come in and out of, but that's the way America's kind of broken up. So I was like, wow, wouldn't that be cool if you did a documentary, like what if the Black Panther movement was never dismantled? What if they were never, like what would a Black...
No, you should have not said this. Gosh, you should have we talked about this later.
hey, man, the ideas, listen, we got 3 people here. We'll be fine. We'll be fine. But anyway,
we're gonna do it.
That would be a great idea to see like what, I mean, it's just so much, you need a lot of historians to be involved with that and how things would go for the future and how that would kind of work together. But I mean, that would be really interesting to see this dystopia world of how would that work, right? Really interesting. So anyway, that's my 2 thoughts, my 2 cents and 2 thoughts, you know. Thank you guys for tuning in tonight. This has been another episode of Rewind with Ro. Tune in next week. I don't know what we're going to do, but we got a couple weeks left before the summer comes. So we'll make it interesting. Have some fun.
Let's do it.
All right. Have a good night.
I don't know what to tell you.
You got to end the show.